easier for them, and they're creating a semantic representation of the concepts that are important to them. So just save that, and you have metadata that records their choices. We had, metadata was explicitly a big part of our project, so it's not a coincidence that I'm here. We were working on visualizing the director's choices during editing. We should actually have a slide on that. Ah, here we go. Okay, so this is a horrible picture. This is an early mock-up. That I couldn't get a better picture. But these little lips here on the timeline are supposed to represent various semantic concepts. So the figure sucks. You know, I wouldn't want you to try to understand it because there isn't anything to understand. However, the point is that an editor is doing a different kind of job. That maybe the director is there, maybe the director isn't there. But okay, interesting point. Was the material that was shot, does it actually correspond to exactly what the director intended before even starting shooting? So what you have in post-production, does it correspond to pre-production? It doesn't have to. You most certainly improvise. But isn't it useful to know that? Ah, the material I have, and I'm supposed to edit it in the final film, is exactly what the director intended from pre-production, or no, this is the result of some improv. That's useful information to know. And the artists don't have to do any extra work for that. 17 minutes. Okay. So we let domain experts communicate to each other, even just to themselves. It's just taking notes for my own, to organize my own thought process, and we can extract metadata from that. How about incentivizing them to do this? Do we have to pay them to put in extra time to do this? No, we're giving them a useful tool, and this makes them provide information. How about user acceptance and adoption? It's all about creating a tool for them. And as I said, they're imposing their structure on our thought. We don't have to convince them that this is the right way. This is the way they chose. Is this going to be universally accepted as perfect? No way. But this is an artifact that some people created, some people from the application domain created for their own use. And, well, obviously if we did a really poor job, maybe we're just kind of, having fun together and we produce something useless. But if we do a good job, and hopefully it's representative enough, then other people can adopt it, as they would adopt some useful technique that their colleagues have created, not a bunch of crazy engineers in an ivory tower who are saying that they're going to categorize the world for them, and the artists have to adopt the point of view of the engineers. Right, so I think that's it.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions?
I hate that last slide, sorry.
No questions? I have one question. Have you already made examples where one model is accepted by another group in the same field, say from one director to another director?
Yes, absolutely. We actually did some market research.
Okay.
So there's a paper that's referenced in the paper published here that shows detailed market research results, and it was unfortunate because we were showing them these prototypes and they would say, stop showing us the prototype, give us a system.
Okay.
So, if you have 10 million euros of venture capital, I'd be glad to, get a product.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, it's like academic research.
But was there kind of acceptance?
There were like 100 people who really loved it.
Really loved
Yeah,
it.
so.
Yeah, I can imagine. But you have to understand the visualization also.
You have to be a professional in the area. I'm not trying to explain this to you. It took us months to understand, and it takes a new director like a full week to get in depth.
Yeah.
But the point is, you're addressing the professional. If you're working with librarians, you're addressing the librarian.
Exactly.
You create a new system. If
Yeah.
you really help them, they're going to invest a week of their time to learn a useful new system.
Yeah.
It's not something crazy.
Yeah, I understand the idea. Very good. Thank you. There's another question?
Speaking of animation, have this been looked at, for example, as a tool to storyboard animations in terms of not only transmitted to film, but then actually sort of leveraging that visualization capability in that sort of format?
So was the question whether this could produce a storyboard?
In terms of linking this to, how would this be used to storyboard an animated film, for example?
Right, so actually this system would be better used to produce a storyboard rather than animation at all. Animations are really tricky because they've got too much detail in and we're actually working at a high level of abstraction. We have to promise animation in order to sell the thing. It's very simple. So ideally what we would like to do is to produce different kinds of visualizations from the initial one. This is more abstract, it's a diagram, storyboards, floor plans, things like that are a bit more concrete, and that would be the ideal output of the system processing the metadata coming from here. You can do other things, like you can help the producer automatically estimate the budget.
Yeah.
Okay, so the artist is just thinking about the art, and then you say, wait a minute, you're going to need a crane for a large part of your film, or more interesting things like, at the point where you're using a crane, which is an expensive piece of kit, you have children and animals running around in your scene. You're going to need this crane for a long period. It's not just that you bring it, for one day. And this is a semantic exhaust thing. The artist really isn't worried about this when creating the notation. Yes, please.
Yes. Basically, you can use your system also to annotate films and to have some search on existing films, or to do some analysis, or can it be used also this way?
It would require more work to do that. We weren't focused on this, and it's clearly a possible extension, but we would really need to sit and look at how people think, because a film is a final result. And this works at a higher level of abstraction. And it's, like when you do criticism, film criticism or literary criticism, you're saying things that the actual artist didn't intend. There's all this business of what was intended in the film and what wasn't, and which details are just how it worked out at the moment of creation, and which details are the salient information. So it's actually tricky. If you try to take a finished film and notate it, you kind of go crazy. Now, in other areas, this might be much easier. So, a librarian who wants to convert an existing catalog into some well-visualized system might have a much easier job than what I'm describing. So there, the answer probably would be yes. May I add a little thing that I've been looking at? Okay, there's a wonderful article on Wired.com about boarding passes. These tremendously, horribly boring scraps of paper that aren't very useful at getting us on a plane. And these guys did a wonderful work with graphical artists, and they redesigned the boarding pass. It just looks good. But if we're people working on metadata, and we look at their designs, we can actually start seeing interesting things in there. They repeat information. They group information in special ways. They make some information more prominent and some not. That actually implies an underlying model. And I think you could really see that by working on the graphical design of a boarding pass, they indicated the direction they might have gone if an engineer would be interested in creating an ontology of a boarding pass. Now that's stupid, of course, but I'm not an expert librarian, not by a long stretch, but I've been flipping through library cards. I was just old enough to have done that when I was a kid, and I can imagine redesigning those cards according to some really good graphical artist who would do it in a modern way, an electronic way, and in exactly the same way. I think that might help librarians interacting with the graphical artist to start coming up with an interesting conceptualization that is really useful for them. I'm repeating information, so I want to see it when I'm doing different things. Like the boarding pass has the time printed in different places, because there's one line that you look at when you're hurrying to the airport, there's another line that you're looking at when you're hurrying to the gate. So maybe when you're interested in understanding something about a book, there are different processes you're in, and you group the concepts, visually repeating information in your underlying model. You actually repeat information, you would reference it. But I think this sort of thing could be very useful in quite surprising areas.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. So now we are ready for the break.